pressure kind of getting to people. So there's small mistakes, and it's a matter of will those compound and cause a problem or not. We're jumping here into game 3. Bryce, Frodan, take it away.
All right, thank you very much. Let's go to game number 3 of Lobby B. We have since reshuffled things up. Go ahead and type in exclamation point scores. If you're watching this live with us on Twitch, you pull up that public Google spreadsheet to show you the point standings, the format, as well as the current state of the lobbies. We got Darth Nub alongside Chakki, PockyGom, Dishsoap, Milk, DQA, Soju, and Clear. Lobby at this stage of the game, Bryce, is always going to feel kind of stacked. I do think that this lobby has some of the most interesting players in the field, though.
Yeah. When we were asked which lobby we wanted to zero in on for this game, and I took a look at this one, I was like, wow, that lobby B has a lot of fun players. Some players performing really well. Some people are doing less well. Dishsoap, for example, has really been struggling today. One of our pre-tournament favorites kind of was in cruise control mode. It felt like a lot of yesterday, and that's not his mode today. He is much more back against the wall. Darth Nub, after a rougher opening, takes that W on Volibear, and so hopefully he can keep that momentum up. Duelist Dexterity, the first time we've seen this so far today, I believe definitely one of the stronger Mirages I expected would be angling for Deja in this game.
Darth Nub, a player you may have seen a lot in chat. You may have even seen him on the subreddit because he is a moderator on r/competitive TFT, often posting threads, and also kind of a math wizard when it comes to TFT. He does a lot of comparisons, like when Rapid Fire Cannon and Ginsu's Rage Blade have breakpoints and what's higher value depending on bonus attack speed. He's that kind of nerd in TFT. And it's very appreciated because someone's got to get into those nitty-gritty details to share with us so that way we can sound smart and don't have to do any work. So Darth Nub, I appreciate you. I hope you're doing well. Your time to pop off is now. Picks up 2 interesting defensive options in Rage Wing Heart. I know Electro Charge is a favorite amongst a lot of players because it's generic. Gives you a lot of damage and lets you prioritize a stronger front line and doesn't commit you to anything. When you play something like Exiles, while it is generic, it does make you feel like you can't play aura items, which are very powerful, especially late stages of the game. So I think Electro Charge makes sense here, Bryce. What do you think?
Well, it makes sense in a vacuum, though I will say that he has solid backline. He already has the Ezreal upgraded, and he's struggling for frontline, and so it's not synergizing very well with his board, right? His front line will die early in fights a lot of the time against actually, a board that has the type of damage that he has, for example, and so you're going to lack a lot of your Electro Charge value, whereas the Exile value in the early stages of this game would be really high. I'm not saying I disagree with the decision. If he's able to hit an upgrade to this Sejuani or an upgrade to this Tahm Kench, Electro Charge is going to feel very good, and I think it's the generically slightly stronger augment, though both of them make my kind of top 10 or 15 in the silver tier. So he gets a win here, very well needed. He's got a couple of important hits he could get in his next shop, so a lot of potential power for Darth Nub. Joining Soju for the first time. We've got an RFC slammed. When I see RFC, I basically exclusively think Deja, Duelist Dexterity, that ramping attack speed, so much value onto having a bunch of attack speed onto the Deja. She's also just the best holder of RFC in the game right now. Is there anything else you think Soju is thinking about, or are we essentially committed to our line from 2-1 here?
RFC is good on Deja in particular. It's also not bad just straight up on Yone if you end up choosing to play Duelist reroll Yone. That's a possibility. RFC is also, if you were to believe what China says, is one of the best items on Olaf. So these are the possibilities that immediately come to mind. RFC also, in the worst case scenario, is just a very strong attack spam to generate mana. Or like some other niche picks like Talon could utilize it fairly well so that he can always stay engaged. So that with that breakdown in mind, I'm pretty sure you're spot on, Bryce. Like, having walked through all the immediate possibilities in my mind, it just feels like it's likely going to be a Mirage game. And that's consistent with Soju's game plan. It seems like him alongside a handful of other players who are in the field want to try their best to set up an angle to go into Mirage if possible. And if you're forced to go into something else because your opener is really solid, like say this Jade or Trainer transition, for example, Soju may entertain it, but I ultimately think that he should stay the course here, given that he has the Leona 2 already this early.
Yeah, the Leona 2, the early Yone definitely helps. He also has the ability to play around, to like push tempo because he's win streaking, right? So he's got the strong board early. This is a board that is very capable of winning. Thrill is a strong augment in this situation because with the Yone ramping up its attack speed over the course of the fight, a lot of the time it's going to be able to kind of go infinite against multiple units if that's what happens at the end. Going against one of the other players with a strong board, Milk has only lost one fight by 1 unit. Soju leveling to 5. A Bebe level out here. Soju taking care of business against his friend Milk. This should be an easy fight win for him.
Yep, that's right. Expect a new TikTok coming out at Milk TFT on TikTok. Say one leveling to 5 is good. Featuring K3 Soju. It'd be really fun. Make sure to check it out. Don't quote me on that, though. Taking a look at the augments. Dishsoap taking AFK. Chakki taking a build different one. And PockyGom taking what looks like to be a Tempest Heart. If my eyes are not deceiving me. Is that correct, Bryce?
I think it's Tempest as well. It might be Shimmer Scale and just be like a little bit blurry on our side, but I'm pretty sure it is Tempest Heart, which is very interesting. Tempest Heart is not something that we see very often at all, so Pocky is one of those players. We talked about it time and time again. He has a 4 Tempest board early, so he's getting that extra boost of attack speed for his units. Pocky at 100 HP, doing what Pocky does. So far, 2 top 4s. He's played excellent teamfight tactics throughout the course of this tournament.
Yeah, Tempest is a trait that I think people just write off of playing beyond 4, and that the only time you play 4 is because of Aushin. But if you actually look a lot deeper, Vertical Tempest is not actually that bad of a trait. It's just hard to hit there reliably. And if there's a player that can trust to get there reliably because of the way he evaluates early and mid-game boards, that's PockyGom. I'm not saying that I think he's going to go 8 Tempest, but I'm also saying that I wouldn't be surprised if Pocky whipped it out, because it just gives you a boatload of attack speed, and the damage from the lightning bolt is actually surprisingly high. And obviously, if you get to 8 Tempest, or even just 6, that heavily implies you've hit Aushin and have a board that you can build around him. So the conditions could line up for some miraculous PockyGom special. We'll just have to see if he can even maintain a streak. Oh my god! The Leona able to take the damage just enough so that the Aatrox couldn't finish it off and focus on the Yone. Yone got to ramp up, and now Milk has destroyed that win streak.
Yeah, and just like that, we've gone from 3 win streakers to 1 win streaker. Soju, the only one left standing with the all-important 2-6 fight. You look at his pool, he's got the other 3 highest HP players, so this is not a walk in the park for Soju by any means. I wish we could see the scouting to see what board he's prioritizing, focusing on. You see some last-second repositioning. He wants to leave that Leona on an island and give his Yone as much space in the fight as possibly can. Going against Pocky, who did lose that fight but is still very strong, has swapped back to a 4 Tempest board.
Yeah, it seems like now that he doesn't have the ability to preserve a streak, maybe he focuses a little bit more on economy. It's hard to say. It does seem like Soju is dealing with all the non-2-star units pretty easily. I think in PockyGom's mind, he's okay with losing this since he's already snapped his streak. But he would obviously like to kill as many units as possible, and it seems like he's going to lose by 2. So, not bad at all for Soju. He's actually able to finish off his Stage 2 campaign with a streak. PockyGom finishes with a nice miniature 2 loss, so you can lean a little bit into that direction. Outside of that, I am very curious about what's happening in Dishsoap and Clear's camp, specifically with Dishsoap. A big trademark of Dishsoap's play, if you're unfamiliar, is he is a Stage 2 god. This guy understands how to play early game, probably better than almost anybody on the server, except for maybe Bertosaurus. And Dishsoap being at 68 is usually for a good reason. And more importantly, it's a position that he doesn't find himself often. He's very good at win streaking in particular. So I want to see what Dishsoap can do come Stage 3.
Yeah, definitely want to check out Dishsoap's spot and see what he is playing around. Soju gets a full Bloodthirster drop here. I wonder if he would consider slamming it. So we see Dishsoap. He's been investing into this Namzi. It looks like he's had Namzi for the entirety of Stage 1, or Stage 2, the majority of it at the very least, with the 9 stacks into it already. Some good itemization options for him here. A lot of very AP focused. All backline items, though, not a lot in the way of frontline items. He does have a ton of gold because of that AFK augment, so he got a boost of 20 gold coming off of the first carousel. I expect to see him either roll meaningfully on 3-2 or 3-5. It's essentially a personal preference on what units he wants to play around for the remainder of this game.
Yeah, that's right. And spraying the components as well in case he gets Cybernetic Uplink. That probably could be the best augment that he would hit, given that he has spread those items. But we'll see. Going up against Soju, who has continued to keep his momentum. Kind of an unfortunate matchmaking setup here for Dishsoap. He played against a player who is hell-bent on keeping his streak together. I love that he also didn't spend his gold just in case level up the Prismatic Augment came his way.
Wow.
And you can see he's picking Tiny Titans to rebound his health back into the mid-80s and can continue to greed. If anything, this has kind of hinted at me that Dishsoap might be angling for a fast 8.
Yes.
I think he might be trying to lose all the way to stage 4-2 and will all in with what feels like infinity amount of gold.
Yeah, this is such a big hit for Dishsoap because without this 30 HP, there is no world in which he could seriously get to 4-2. He'd be basically dead at that point in time. But with the Tiny Titans, it's 2 extra lives functionally, as I would think about them kind of heading towards the later stages of the game. And that's the difference between being able to confidently play around your 4-2 fast 8 as opposed to rolling on 4-1. And that's a really big deal with his itemization because this Jeweled Gauntlet Archangels is really strong on all 3 of the 10-cost dragons. He's got a Nomsy stacking up that he would love to continue to play around and keep on his board, and so he has a lot more flexibility in this game because of his Tiny Titans. It's not often that a silver augment feels game transformative, but this is one of those times. This completely changes his approach to the game. It is such a high roll moment for him and significantly increases his average placement this game as a result.
Well, time will tell. So for now, we can take a break from Dishsoap and check out another board. Let's look at DQA. Don't worry, we'll get back to Dishsoap in time for his 4-2, I think. Unless he's going to surprise us completely and go at 3-5, which I think would be ill-advised and uncharacteristically poor decision from Dishsoap. So put a pin on that. A player who rolled all the way down. I see 1 gold in his reserve right now. He's still at level 6. EQA did not hit Tristana 2 or Lulu 2, but did hit the Heimerdinger. A lot of times in this position, when you're playing the 3 trainer, you want to try a roll as level 6. You can hit maximum odds on Tristana and maybe Lulu. Get that trainer ramping because it might not feel like a big deal. Like, oh, it's just 1 snack. Like, yeah, like how much is it going to be? But it's 1 snack across the entire stage, which might cheer up your Nomsy, which allows you to have a better front line. You don't have to roll as much on your streaking. It all kind of adds up. He does get a pretty commanding win over Clear, who is at 30 HP. Wow. Clear was down bad before with his health total and deficit, but now it's even bigger gap between him and 7th place.
Yeah, it's a really, really rough spot for Clear. We obviously got to see his board. It's not looking pretty. He's going to have to all in and pray that he's able to hit a Siphon in order to stabilize. He's got a QSS. He's got a BT slammed already. He also takes a Corki off his carousel, which is really big. No augments really jumping out at me. You know, we talked about Soju having the Mirage line. Mirage Heart, very, very good for that line. Here with the Cannoneer Heart. It's like a bunch of generic silver augments. A double silver lobby so far, so the overall value of the augments relative to board state is going to be much lower than we're seeing in a lot of lobbies, especially since this set has normalized around gold augments as opposed to silver. So it's going to be a lobby where your board itself is going to be doing the talking more than your augments.
42 being hit. It's a pretty impactful snag here for Clear. But that's exactly where I was going next. His front line is so fragile. It's just Ornn 1 and Tom Kench 2 hanging out naked. There's just no items, no extra ways to make them stronger. We have Electro Charge, which is a damage augment. We have damage in spades. We don't have tankiness, and our utility is okay, but not fantastic because we don't have even mages online. It does seem like Dishsoap natural to Deja, by the way. Dishsoap takes another loss. And the fact that he already has Deja to work off of is better. It actually gives Dishsoap even more outs. Doesn't feel like he has to hit the 2 like a 10 cost dragon in order to stabilize his board. He can now play around that Deja a lot more cleanly.
Yeah, he absolutely can. It's also very interesting to me that Clear is choosing to keep all of this itemization onto this Senna. He has a Jinx on the bench he could easily put in. He could think about moving items onto Corki. It seems like he really, really wants to find his way into a Siphon and get those items onto Siphon at all costs. It does make sense, but given his board state, it is a uphill battle. He doesn't have a lot of gold to work with. He could easily not wind up hitting Siphon here.
Interesting positioning from Soju on the other side, by the way, kind of backline clumping everything. I wonder if there's some assassins in the lobby that we haven't caught up with yet. And as a result, Soju doesn't really engage quickly. It took like 5 seconds for most of his melee units to get into the fray. Awesome, valuable time. Soju taking a pretty heavy loss, and now from 100 HP at the start of the stage at 68. Chakki has a streak snapped by Dishsoap or by Darth Nub? It was one of the Ds.
Yeah.
Okay, so Darth Nub's still streaking. Darth Nub with that momentum behind him. Bola Bear 3 win. Now going into stage 4. Milk rolling at Wolves. This is a move that might look confusing at first, but part of the reason why is because he knows he's contested in the Mirage trade. So instead of saying, hey, greeting for 5 extra gold, forget that. I'll go for like 2 gold or 3 gold interest instead and roll before my opponent so I can have a look at Deja, especially with a duplicator on his bench. 2 spatulas. That's a tactician's crown.
Yeah, that is definitely a tactician's crown for Milk. He loves those spatulas for these high roll moments, and he gets it. I really agree with his decision. And there it is, the Deja 1, such a big moment for him. It's a massive stabilization point. He can play around this Deja and get stable Deja 1. The big distinction between Deja and the other 4-cost or 8-cost dragons right now is how strong Deja 1 feels, and it's just such a big hit for him. He can now theoretically at least look at level 8 and capping out his board.
Yeah, you can stop rolling here, right? You just want to roll to make sure you have the Deja in your competitor. Going up against DQA, who has a Shimmer, rather just an Itis with a Zaya. So DQA playing very open right now. I'm pretty sure he doesn't want to commit to either of these champions, but he does have a pair of them, a pair of Itis and a pair of Zaya. Zaya just feels like there's too many things that need to go right for her to be good. It's not that Zaya is incapable of doing well or winning lobbies. It's just that hard, that much harder compared to some of the other AD carries. We're coming up on 4-2.
Here we go.
See what's going to happen. We're back on Dishsoap's POV. Instantly picks Ascension. And here we go. The fast 8 with 50 gold instantly hits Deja 2. Now just has to make sure that his front line is stable.
Yeah, this is so big that he's hit this Deja 2 because I think he would have potentially played around a 10-cost dragon, but because he hit all these Dejas, he's going to play around the Deja. It just makes sense. It's a strong Mirage. This is a big deal for the other Mirage players. We've seen Soju on that line. We've seen Milk on that line, potentially some other folks as well. So Dishsoap stealing 3 of those Dejas from the pool on this fast 8. Hits an early Zoe as well. So he's kind of playing instead of a very unusual version of the Deja board, right? He doesn't have a game plan built around playing Deja in the Mirage line like some of the other players do. He wants to play around the Mage tree. He wants to play around this Nomsy investment that he's had. But hey, you hit Deja 2, you play Deja 2. That's just correct teamfight tactics.
Yeah, the rest of his board is 1-star basically, except for this Heimer. And surprisingly enough, that Nomsy at 2-star is one of his tankiest units, so he's just going to have to use that to the best of his ability. The items are fantastic. Head-to-head, though, Soju's getting the attack speed, and his Deja's aiming the wrong way. Another loss for Dishsoap. He's not done rolling. He knows that. He's holding pairs for pretty much everything on his board. The Hecarim, the Lulu, Silas. Taking a look at what's happening in another board as well. Seems like Chakki did end up taking another loss there. An additional roll down here for Dishsoap. Finds Lulu 2. Nico 2 as well. He could, but in order to play this Nico 2, he has to deconstruct the Mage's aspect of his board, which I think he's ready to do at this point. And he could play Gnar for the Shapeshifter. So there's a lot of modularity to his board. Dishsoap kind of showing you what you can do to have flexible elements of your gameplay. Using 3 different compositions, trying to take the best of everything to maximize the effectiveness of this Deja. But this matchup could be pretty tough, especially since a lot of his frontline runs towards the back. Where does the Siphon charge? Away from the Deja, which is really nice, but it waltzes all the way down and bites the Lulu. And I don't know if there's enough frontline for Dishsoap to be able to withstand this second wave and second cast here. Oh no, Dishsoap takes another loss. He might be going 8th here unless DQA beats him there.
Yeah, it does feel like DQA is going to beat him there because DQA's spot looks like an utter disaster, but Dishsoap with 2 kind of unfortunate fights there. Some bad RNG. His Soju's Deja 1 winds up getting aggro onto his Deja 2, and he loses that fight that way. And then he plays PockyGom, a player who is all in, 0 gold on level 7 with that Siphon too. So really, really tough spot for Dishsoap. I felt like he was in an excellent position when he was going for that fast 8, but that's the nature of the beast. Sometimes the fast 8 works out, and sometimes you just don't hit enough of the units you're looking for. Taking a look at these augments, anything sticking out at you? Darth Nub with a Axiom arc, not something we see every day.
Yeah, very unusual indeed. Hopping on back on board. Part of the reason why Chakki's board was looking a little unusual is because that build different that he's leaning into. Playing around build different 1 the entire game is actually quite a divisive opinion. There's a lot of players and streamers who believe that playing around build different 1 the stage of the game is actually quite a big mistake because it doesn't feel like high enough impact and you would rather focus on your synergies. And then there's players who go against the grain. I know Asa, for example, believes that build different 1 is totally fine to play around the entire game, as well as other prestigious players from China, for example, like 62nd, who is one of the best ladder players in that region. So it depends. Where do you fall on the spectrum, Bryce? Do you like playing around build different the entire game?
I just don't know that I've been offered build different 1 enough times this set to have an actually informed opinion. I will say that when deferring to the opinions of others, 62nd marks the very top of the ladder for me, and my recollection of his opinion on that is he thinks it's not even close. He had some people criticizing him, like, why are you playing out on a build different 1, and he basically called them an idiot, right? He was like, why would you not play around build different 1? Are you trolling? So if 62nd feels that way, then I feel that way too, which means that Chakki is making the right decision in this game. I say that with at least 51% certainty.
Wow, rare appeal to authority. You don't really hear that often from Bryce. Cherish it while it lasts as we take a look at what Chakki can do. Hit Itis 2. DQA dying has released more Itises into the wild. We kind of knew DK was going 8 though, playing Itis 1, Xayah 1, and then just loose streaking all of stage 4. Soju does have 3 items onto his Deja, and what Soju's been able to do very well has been pocketing his Deja to be avoiding the CC, which is such a big deal. You can just see that his Deja just needs a little bit of breathing room, and that attack speed ramps up so quickly, not to mention that Soju has additional damage through Stand United, and that Thrill of the Hunt to get those resets. And funny enough, you see players who hit Deja 2, hit a reasonable board, and yes, Soju with 1-star Deja is doing better.
That is an insta-pick for Soju. He has his Yasuo itemization taken care of. So good for him. Does lack for frontline, literally no frontline items, but this is one of those old-fashioned, my defense is my offense. He is killing the enemy board so fast with his 8 Mirage RFC version of the Deja 1 that he does not feel like he needs frontline. He's just trying to do, it's like almost like the old school Yone boards, right? The boards where you just say the challengers just roll over the opponent in the first 5 seconds of fight, and the fights are either won or lost in that time. Soju's approach to this game is very similar.
Like they say old school, like 6 months ago, we considered old school in TFT, but you're not wrong. What Bryce is referencing is the Gizmos and Gadgets set 6 challenger board that Yone would try to go for a quick reset alongside Fiora. Oh, I missed set 6 Fiora. That was so good.
Such a good unit.
Excuse me. All right, taking a look at Dishsoap. Dishsoap down to 4 HP. No more life to give. His next loss will be his last, except I do see a Soraka, so there is a single condition to that. He could theoretically heal up with Starcaller, seeing as how he's going up against Chakki's Quirky Itis board. This Quirky board is actually quite susceptible to Deja, so Chakki does pick a composition that is quite vulnerable to the rest of the lobby, but it depends on the quality of Dishsoap's board. As you can see, that Deja not able to cut through the front line very quickly. Chakki has a lot of tankiness.
Oh, no.
All of his tanks have 3 items. And the Corki doesn't end up dying, but can Itis finish it off with the autos?
Oh my god. He lives to fight another day. Feels great, man. His board is actually quite strong overall at this stage. He has some okay front line. The ZZ Rod buying extra time. Nico's such a good user of the Gargoyle. This board is fine. If he had this board for a full amount of the game, he would be in a better spot. I will say that it does feel like this Ascension pickup is coming back to hurt him. We talked during our first game about how bad the data was on Ascension, and I was surprised to see Dishsoap not re-roll that augment. It felt like like he could have gotten a lot of better augments on that third augment. His fights are just happening too quickly. He's basically getting no value out of that gold augment time and time again.
Yeah, I think I can agree with that, although it did come in clutch in the end stages of that last fight. As you can see, the fight is almost feel like it's been determined, and we're still not even at Ascension. Now Ascension kicks in when the fight is basically over, so you can kind of understand exactly what we're pointing at. Again, it's not something that I feel like is going to make or break Dishsoap's game. I think Dishsoap's game is actually kind of out of his hands at this point. It's down to the matchmaking and the way his health total can line up with barely surviving if the Sorokin can get there. But it is worth noting that Ascension has been very low value here indeed.
Yeah, the positioning matters a little bit as well, though with Deja, it's not exactly the most positioning-dependent composition. Soju picks up a pair of Aoshins. He does have, I was going to say, I feel like he's committed to this line. You know, he has 8 Mirage on line. He's gotten this Yasuo. There is the second Deja, such a big deal. Can he find the Deja 2? He's not. He's lost a couple fights in a row going up against Darth Nub. He's on the right side away from this Siphon, but he does eat a big Shroud here.
Yeah, it kind of depends on how the units are clumping as well for both the Wind Blast as well as Siphon. Siphon charges back immediately. The Axiom Arc actually kind of came up a little bit there. The Axiom Arc restored Siphon's mana enough to cast again, which is not exactly the application that I thought, getting double Rampage, almost like a Mage Siphon, if you will. It works.
Yeah, actually, Spicy Appies has believed for the entire set that Axiom Arc Siphon in particular is good. He has talked about it multiple times on his stream for exactly what we just saw in that fight. Siphon is a unit that gets a lot of kills, right? Because of the execute damage, it's oftentimes getting a kill. And because so much of his damage comes from that ultimate ability, not to mention the disruption from the dash, it really does synergize quite nicely. So nice job from Darth Nub showing off that you can play an augment that people think is terrible and make it work.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully, in an ideal world, all these augments are pickable, but some of them are stronger in the right conditions, even if they perceive to be weak.
Oh.
What's not weak is this Deja 2 that Soju has finally hit, and also Soju is just 2 Nunus away from Nunu 3, which would also incidentally free up a spot on his board. So that Nunu 3 is actually a really big deal for Soju for multiple reasons.
Yeah, it is, although because of how contested the Mirage line is, it's not easy to come by. But it is what it is. Some last-second repositioning from Soju. Does he get it right? Going up against Chakki's board. Chakki has a Zaya in now. He's got 2 copies of Corki. He's so many Corkis on this board, Dan.
There's a lot of Corkis for sure. But they all line up perfectly for the Wind Blast number 1. Soju's front line's down, though. And Chakki is not going to be able to withstand the backline, but just enough units survive. Am I missing something? Is Chakki playing Double Trouble? There's not. That's
no.
Nico. That's a Nico,
it's a Nico
that's replicating the Zaya, a really cool tech to get additional 80 damage for his composition.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know this tech because we don't see it very often, but it's particularly good in built different compositions because you get the attack speed on the Nico, it copies the AD of the unit next to it, and so it can actually put out a decent amount of DPS. If there are sins as well, you can kind of protect your backline and almost peel like we're in a game of League of Legends, but some cool iteration of the board from Chakki. Checking Clear's board. Speaking of cool iteration, we talked about how you really want to play around Siphon, but outstanding recognition. Shio can get the job done as well. Clear's been able to actually get to level 9 here going up against Soju. Can his front line stand up long enough to get through Soju's?
I mean, he does have Nico too with the Warmogs, and Soju doesn't have anti-heal. Soju is cutting through it very quickly, though, and here we come. The second Wind Blast. If we can get one more, that could determine his entire fight.
Oh, he's dead.
And Soju goes down in 7th place. His board looked pretty good in the mid-game, but I think his lack of frontline really started to haunt him. As you can see, his Deja did a lot of damage, just not able to stabilize. Chakki takes another loss. Milk also with another loss. And don't look now, Dishsoap is the only player on a streak, and now he's pushing for top 2.
Oh, I am looking now. I think a lot of fans at home were probably saying Dishsoap is doomed, this game is over. And I was like, well, that board's pretty good. He won a couple of very close fights. He's been able to slowly but surely heal his way up with that Soraka, maybe even getting himself back into Lives territory. And the HP is so close. You have Darth Nub way ahead of the lobby at 53 HP, and then everyone else is theoretically capable of dying in this next fight. So we are in for a wild finish to this game.
PockyGom's board is a board that I just don't feel like it's real, and yet here we are. I guess in the sense it's just a straight up Whispers board, but it just feels so unusual with the way things are positioned, the itemization of how Randuin's is like front center. There's a lot of things that to break down. He does end up selling to replace this, so you can maybe itemize in a separate way and get the ideal Zephyr target.
Let's get these items
in
in.
the corner. Did he get the Banshees off?
I don't know that he did. It was so close. It was right at the last second to open his clears board. That is a huge Zephyr onto the Corki. Corki not doing DPS early in the fight. Siphon dives to the back line. It one-shots the Corki. Clears damage is dead here aside from that Shio-Yu in the front line, but that doesn't matter. We got so excited about it, but Clear just has too many threats on his board between the Shio-Yu and the 4-star Namzi. Pocky's just not able to get the job done despite the good Zephyr, despite the incredibly good RNG, and he is dead. Dishsoap dies as well. Milk as well. 3 players. Our top 3 is finalized here.
And Dishsoap and PockyGom tied at exactly 0 HP, and the difference was their starting HP, which is what PockyGom, I believe, had the edge.
Yeah, it was 2
over.
HP. Pocky had 18 and Dishsoap had 16. Wild.
Wow. Unbelievable. So close. And yet again, another game where Chakki seems to just kind of evade the Hammer of Doom, and look at it. Like, again, it's not a double trouble board, but you know what? He's getting stats like he is because of the build different. Chakki leaning into what makes his composition strong, as he does have a very tanky itis, and that is the only unit not getting build different value. And he's itemizing all of his back line, working onto the Shio-Yu. Shio-Yu does struggle with both Xayah and Corki, and now there's 4 of them. It was harder to deal with one of them if you were playing Shio-Yu. And this is a huge amount of damage coming to Clear. I count 6 effective units surviving. Clear's dead. Chakki's top 2.
Chakki is top 2. We have casted 2 games so far today. We have casted 2 Chakki lobbies so far today. Both games, he played beautifully. Both games, he took different lines. You get casted over saying, is anything surprising you today? For the most part, the answer has been no. People have played pretty much as I would expect, but Chakki played a very creative version of the Devastating Charge board in order to kind of duct tape together without hitting Deja, ultimately gets onto Yasuo and gets a nice second there. And playing around Built Different 1, like you said, a controversial decision. He's going backline with this Nico. He is making it work, and it has been some beautiful teamfight tactics.
Who has Rageblade and QSS as well. Hilarious, because he's going to copy Xayah, which is the real Xayah. To reveal itself in a little second here as the Pike casts death from below. Siphon does charge towards the Itis. Itis tries once more to ramp up, but everything is perfectly clumped. I think this is way too much damage. Darth Nub is running over. And Darth Nub is able to do it. Back-to-back victories, putting himself in prime position at the halfway point of this mid-set finale to get that first place finish and those extra points.
Yeah, what a finish from Darth Nub. Excited to unpack that one, but we've got some bonus coverage here. We are hopping on board with Lobby A, checking out Kurum's spot. Another top 4 from Kurum. He has been so consistent throughout the tournament. This top 4 is rounded out with Solus, Omde, and Stellar Minhee. So some disappointing performances from Robin, from Emily, from Bird, and from Casper in this game. The people who have been performing kind of better so far today, so really, really nice bounce back games for a few of these folks.
Yeah, trying to get my bearings straight here. We have a 4 Cavalier Whispers board from Kurum X. Very unusual, but pretty sweet. Cavalier is actually very good for Siphon to reduce the amount of time it takes to get that Rampage and Siphon into the fight. Not to mention, it also makes positioning for Siphon very difficult. Oh, big descent. Also, Solus has an Infinity Edge and an Assassin Emblem onto that Shyvana as well. So apparently it is Transform Your Dragon Day here in Mid-Set Finale. There's some spicy stuff going on here.
Yeah, I think that was actually Solus scouting, and it was Omde's board because Solus lost the last fight as well.
Oh, you're
Don't
right.
quote me on that, but I think that's correct. But yeah, Kurum's board is woke if I've ever seen one. I mean, this is a really cool line that he's on. He's playing around Pike as a secondary carry to go with this Cavalier Siphon. Some last-second repositioning here. He does move that Shroud to the other side. Did Sellerman, he get it? Sellerman, he dodged the most important unit, which is the Aushin as well as the Zoe. It's actually a huge whiff on that Shroud from Kermex because he has two, one on each side, and Stellar splits the middle.
Well, Hecarim does get the stun, though. There's no mana generation item, but the Archangels does ramp things up considerably. We'll see how much damage it can do, as there are a lot of tanking units with the Cavaliers and the Dragon's Claw. The Rampage does end up killing one of the units, but not before Daisy is going to continue to muck things up. Where does Siphon bite? Of course. Chooses to go for the Rise, and that's going to wrap it up for Kuramex. Another solid top 4 finish with an unusual board. Good job to Kuramex there. Let's take a look at the top 3. Dial into Stellar Minhe's board, who finds a Rage Blade. Find a way to put this to good use. I like the construction of this Dragon Horde board as well. A lot of people feel like when you get this augment, you have to play like 3, maybe 4 dragons. That's not really the case. Sometimes you can just play 2 dragons and a ton of good support, and that's exactly what Stellar Mini has done.
Yeah, it's a really, really nice board Stellar has put together. He's playing around a lot of the strongest units in the game. This mage synergy, not a lot of teching up into vertical mages happening at this stage in the set, but 3 mages so powerful. Zoe probably the most broken unit in the game when you have that mages online. The double chalice, plus it's going to have a rage blade, so it's going to be able to cast a ton. And really nice front line playing around basically a bunch of just good units. I'm surprised actually to see this rage blade wind up onto the Shio Yu. I was thinking he was going to wind up on Zoe. Stellar thinking about Omde's board, thinking about how he wants to position it. We need to get a better look at Omde's board for us to be able to analyze the fight. That's the only downside here, is that we're kind of at the mercy. Here we go. We're taking a look at the board. It's a Sins board, so we're going to see some last-second clumping coming out.
Whoa!
He's actually playing against Solus, so it looks like Stellar's got the Ghost.
He's got double Assassin Dragon.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is a cool lobby.
He's got Assassin Shyvana as well as Assassin Siphon. Assassin Dragons. You know, that's not the band I was thinking of. That would be TFT themed, but we'll take it. They played at Worlds. They can play at TFT Worlds, maybe?
I love it. Big damage coming out from that Sin board. Solus takes a good 3rd place in this game, and this is a really, really cool board that Omde has put together. We talked about it a little bit at the top of the show, that Gangly was super high on Omde coming into the tournament, and I am seeing why. This is a very thoughtfully put together board. Another player playing around with these dragon augments, but not just turning off their brain and playing infinite dragons. They're playing around the Sins, and it is a really scary board that Omde has put together.
Yeah, we'll see. The clump does better versus things like the Siphon, but it does worse against Shyvana's Descent as well as Pike's Death from below. The Shroud does land. It is money. Let's see what ends up happening here. An instant double cast from Zoe does pop up a lot of the dragons, and the invulnerability stops the immediate bite. The Streamlabs notification is getting in the way. I can't see what's happening. Dinosaurs are jumping up. Dinosaurs, dragons, fire, explosion, lightning. What ends up happening? Not enough to kill. Omda goes down. And the incredibly stellar board from Stellar Minhe makes it